During the making of this video, many different companies, situations, and miners were featured. Some of the scenes were staged. You may see things that differ from your company's safety procedures. We encourage you to discuss these issues during and after the video. During the video, after each of the 12 chapters, there is a discussion opportunity which will allow you to divide the video into training segments. These areas will be marked with the wording, "Any discussion."
Hello, welcome to another exciting edition in our Mine Safety video training series. Our topic today is equipment maintenance safety. According to MSHA statistics, in the last 10 years, approximately 1,100 miners and contractors have been killed or permanently disabled while performing equipment maintenance tasks. We will be discussing and illustrating various maintenance tasks on many pieces of mining equipment similar to those that work in your mining operations. I hope you find this video both entertaining and educational.
Planning is very important. The worst thing in the world is to jump into a job and not have any idea what you're doing. Personal safety is always first. I don't want anyone hurt.
No matter what we do, it's dangerous work, and with dangerous work, you can't overlook the least little bit of concern.
You could end up with a very serious injury or fatality very easily because of the size of the equipment, the size of the piece of equipment you're working with.
It's very important because if a person isn't paying attention and you don't lock out, another person can come up and crank up the machine up, and you could be working on a drive shaft, you could be working on a fan belt, and you could just lose your fingers, lose your life.
There's no shortage of the number of opinions and advice from management and miners when it comes to equipment maintenance safety. There's also no shortage of potential safety hazards encountered during maintenance work either. We could produce a series of one-hour training programs on every facet of this subject. However, we've chosen in about a half an hour to review the major points for equipment maintenance safety, both in the shop and in the field. It is our suggestion that you follow the guidelines of a written job task analysis, as the Mine Safety and Health Administration describes it, when organizing for and performing equipment maintenance. Now, your company may call the written approach a job hazard analysis, or you may use any number of other names. Regardless of what you wind up calling the procedure, make notes on the upcoming major points to follow in devising your own steps for equipment maintenance safety. We have crawled all over equipment repair sites, from replacing a motor in a dredge to repairing hydraulic lines on a bulldozer, from putting in a transmission on a drag line to routine maintenance on a haul truck dump bed cylinder, from dealing with a broken down water truck in the field to maintenance and repair in large and small shops, for some real-world examples of safety procedures. In advance, we thank all of the companies in the Florida mining community who have helped make this training program possible. When you compose original written plans and procedures, get everybody involved. Have the equipment maintenance manager, service foreman, and the mechanics and technicians all pitch in. If everybody has their say or their 2 cents worth, you're more likely to get them to follow safety protocol during actual maintenance or repair jobs. Now, here are some major suggested items to include in your plan. Worker task assignments, qualifications, assembly of needed tools, personal protective equipment required, job steps, hazards, remedies, ground conditions, weather conditions, safe access to equipment, pinch points, body positioning, lockout tagout procedures and reversal, environmental and HAZCOM requirements, a cleanup list leaving the repair site, special precautions during holidays, special precautions for supervisors and foremen. As you now draft the written analysis and procedures, you might be thinking, are all these steps necessary for every job, either now or at the job site? Leave a step out, and there's danger waiting.
It is a very dangerous situation. I had a close friend that disconnected the wrong line on a front end loader on the dump cylinder, and the Z-arm crushed him between the differential and the Z-arm, and he'd been a mechanic for like 20 years, and he knew better, and as soon as they got to him, he told them he had disconnected the wrong line. If he'd had it properly cribbed and the bucket in the right position, it wouldn't have happened, but we all get in a hurry, which we shouldn't do. The end result was he passed away about 3 hours after it happened.
We're going to be having a meeting to discuss exactly how we're going to do it. That's the number one, safety. Once we get it down in the hole, then we'll be getting the tools, putting the bolts in to mount it down to make sure it's secure. Then we'll take it off the crane and we'll start wiring it up.
In the shop or in the field, hold a meeting with the crew.
Discuss the situation and know prior to what you're doing. Know ahead of time.
The crew chief, Danny, is getting the team together to discuss the replacement of a motor on a dredge. The new motor is offloaded from a flatbed truck to a tug-driven barge. It will then be taken to the dredge.
We have worked similar situations several times, so I know each person personally. And we've discussed the situations.
In his meeting, Danny is telling each worker what his assignment will be. He's then asking each worker what's their prior experience in electrical work, and in particular motor replacement for a dredge. He's then listening to their responses before finalizing the assignment of each task. He is verifying worker experience, skills, and capabilities before moving ahead.
A plus tonight also is the same crew that removed the motor off the dredge is now again the same crew going to install the motor on the dredge. So they're already aware of what's happening.
One other thing that you might remember, if you will need specialized skills such as cutting or welding, or a crane operator for the job, make arrangements for those workers and tasks ahead of job time.
Well, we're going to be using regular hand wrenches. We're going to be using an air impact. We're going to be using hammer wrenches. We're going to be using a sledgehammer.
The maintenance foreman on the dredge, Steve, is down in the tool room telling us what tools are needed for motor replacement. Whether replacing a hose on a water truck, an electrical component for large mobile equipment in a major shop, or replacing a dump bed cylinder on a haul truck, make a list of tools that will be needed for the job. Gather them now. In between jobs, organize tools. Back to Steve on the dredge for pointers.
Yeah, we're trying to organize where we have an oiler come down and he knows what he's getting, where to get it from. We're going to have them all labeled, the smallest size to the largest size. We're going to have wrote down what that particular tool is. That way when it comes to the job that we're doing, we have that particular tool for that particular job.
In any work area, plan ahead for many tools for diverse jobs.
Well, there's so many different jobs on the barge. There's electrical motors, there's gas engines, Every job takes a different tool.
Count on needing several sizes for some tools and their uses.
Those are come-alongs. Each one is a different weight for a particular job. You got 1 ton, 3 ton, 5 ton. You always have to discuss what job you're going to do and what weight you're going to be using to get the right come-along.
A maintenance manager for a very large mobile equipment maintenance and repair facility warns you to make sure that no improper tools are being used on the job.
Most technicians will have their own tools, they'll have things, but management has to be aware of what's going on the work site. When they observe tools that are improper, chains and instead of slings and things of this sort, they need to take action immediately. But on the other side of this, when the technician comes to management, says, look, there's a situation I have that's developing, I'm trying to do this job, it requires a special tool or some device to do the job, then management has to be prepared to support that with the expenditure of capital to keep the workplace safe and work done properly.
For your written plan and when getting ready for the job, what personal protective equipment will miners and visiting contractors need? On this particular job task analysis form, you see at the bottom, pressure clean wheel group in the bed on a haul truck. Also listed are the potential hazards to be encountered, such as dirt in the eyes and could be burnt by high pressure steam. In addition to standard PPE, the JTA printed form recommends in this case the wearing of safety glasses and face shield for the job. On the job later, planning for and having PPE ready in advance is the key to miners having and using it. This hard hat, gloves, and face shield, in addition to welding apron, will be needed by this miner to cut pieces of steel.
He needs to not only have a face shield, but he also needs to have his hard hat on, because you never know what's going on around you, especially when you're cutting in that, because you have no idea of what's behind you, above you, or whatever. You always have the overhead crane that might come across you. So those type of things, we're required to wear a hard hat in the shop.
A practical approach to minimum PPE would be to have additional hard hats, eye protection, and hearing protection, minimum PPE on hand in the shop for visitors and/or employees. As you realize, employees have been known to leave or lose PPE. Visitors may not have it at all. While taking a cylinder off a pan scraper, these two miners are wearing gloves to prevent hydraulic oil and grease from repeatedly making contact with the skin. As they weld in an area at the top of a haul truck dump bed, these two miners are wearing full body harnesses, welding helmets, gloves, long sleeve shirts, and pants. In an awkward position atop a water truck in the hot weather, these two miners are wearing their hard hats, eye protection, and a long sleeve shirt for the one inspecting hydraulic lines. Standard PPE or additional PPE. These miners are all wearing it because of prior and continuous training, prior planning on JTAs, and then the reinforcement of PPE best practices on the job.
You have the gears, you have drums that they're putting in, you have frictions, you have swing assemblies. All this is very heavy, 2,000 to 3,000 pounds, you know, and as they're bringing the crane in, they have to put it on a shaft, so there's not very much room on this, very inches, and sometimes you just have inches, so you have to be very careful.
A simple statement by Donald, the maintenance foreman, describing what lies ahead on major repairs occurring to a dragline. This brings us to the JTA phase of identifying job steps, hazards, and then remedies. Yes, write it down on paper in your planning meetings, as you see on this JTA about rear tire removal on a haul truck in the shop. The document refers to the job steps of removing the tires as a complete assembly, which are elaborated on in a different additional page. An immediate hazard is identified with the statement, "Note the weight of the tire and rim is 3,051 kilograms or 6,730 pounds." An immediate remedy is then noted on a different page with the language, "Observe all safety precautions related to tire removal. Stand clear of tire and lifting arm during removal." These very detailed remedies are noted even though a subcontractor will assist in the tire changing portion of the job. Beyond the written approach, steps, hazards, and remedies must be continuously identified in the field in preparing for and executing the task at hand. Take the preparation by miners to remove and replace hydraulic hoses on this dozer.
The first thing is they need to make sure that the blade is on the ground, which acts as a chalk for the machine. And then any part that they take off, they need to stop, think, like a railroad crossing, look and listen, and see what might happen if that particular piece fell.
Should you repeat the steps, hazards, and remedies procedures if you move to a different task on the dozer? Bernie, the maintenance foreman, says yes every time.
Step number one is step back and take an overview of the job. That's an important thing. That gets you started. You know, if you're going to be removing a transmission, have the proper hitching devices to hitch to the transmission, the proper slings, chains, whatever. And then step back again and say, okay, we're hooked up. Now, what else could we get hurt at? And they need to take an overview of whatever project they're going to be working on.
Job steps, hazards, and remedies. Identify them in writing. Identify them in the field. Continuously update them task to task. In the Florida mining region, ground conditions can change dramatically with thundershowers and rainstorms. Water can collect on roadways and travelways in minutes. Travelway access to an in-the-field repair site often becomes hazardous due to standing water that might engulf a pickup truck or a small vehicle. Add to that the near-road proximity of electric power cables for drag lines and...
We have power cable that we have to be, cautious of. Plus, the roads in some places very narrow, and then we have the road is wet and has a lot of holes in the road. So you have to be careful because it gets real wet, and the more the trucks drive through it, the deeper the hole gets.
When writing a JTA for in-the-field repair jobs, warn miners to avoid the dangers of power cables. In the field, look for and avoid them.
The potentials, if you drive over it, you can get electrocuted. I think it's 7,200 volts in that power cable, so you have to be very careful.
Ground conditions can change dramatically when travelways are being built and extended in and out of the mine.
We have to extend the road more and more as we're coming down, and you have to be careful because we're dumping material there too, and dozers are leveling it. Watch out for trucks traveling, watch out for the power cable, watch out for the grader, watch out for the dozer. There's going to be a lot of equipment on that road. You have to just be very careful and look at all points.
Are there drag lines operating and creating stockpiles along the travelway?
You're going to have falling rock. You're going to have rocks coming off the pile. They will travel on the road. They will come on and roll across the road. So you have to be very careful of that.
In JTA's reference haul truck travel, changing traffic patterns, and the possibility of yielding the right-of-way to haul trucks.
Some of the roads are very narrow, and we have to just drive slow because you're going to have to stop, give the right-of-way to the loaded truck, or give a right-of-way to any truck. That's one of the hazards you're going to have to do. Give the right-of-way to the haul truck.
A final note on ground conditions and weather conditions. Before thunderstorms approach, warn miners of the dangers of lightning and injury or death from electrical discharges. Teach them to retreat to safe areas until storms pass. Also, advise them that handrails and steps for access to equipment may become slippery and dangerous due to rain and wetness. When writing a job task analysis on safe access to equipment, miners must be instructed to use existing methods of access, such as these built-in-place handrails and stairs aboard this dredge. However, in other cases, miners will have to adapt to on-the-job conditions and perhaps construct temporary access, such as this scaffolding, which is being used by 2 welders to reach the top of a dump bed on a haul truck. No matter what type of access structure must be used, the most basic principle that needs to be emphasized is that miners use the 3-point system of contact, 2 hands and 1 foot, or 2 feet in 1 hand, in going up or down approved stairs, ladders, catwalks, scaffolding, and the like. Safe access requires that maintenance and repair personnel constantly think about what the job site conditions are like and adapt to make the correct decision about the access method to be used. To come from a travelway and board a tug, these miners have constructed a temporary gangway. Notice that they use the 1 handrail provided as they walk on the wooden flooring. This dragline has welded in-place ladders in certain areas which repairmen can mount and dismount. However, in other areas where there are no ladders, the men have brought their own portable metal ladders and can position them to mount and dismount to and from the dragline. This haul truck has welded in-place ladders on the front of it in a very common location for access. However, in the back area where miners are replacing a cylinder, access is more limited. Here they've brought a fiberglass ladder which they're using to mount and dismount the haul truck in this area. As you can see, there are many different challenges for safe access to equipment. The common thread is that miners must analyze each, choose the safe method of access, and then practice the 3-point system of contact. Right up front in this section, in your JTA drafting session and later on site, you need to require that miners chock, crib, and stabilize equipment to prevent accidental injury, crushing, or death occurring due to the unexpected movement of the equipment. Remember that dragline under repair?
That boom will creep down and fall. It eventually, sometimes the brakes will not hold and it will fall down. It will fall down and go to the ground, and it could possibly bend if a person's working on it.
What steps has Donald required the repair crew to follow to mitigate the hazard?
First, they put the boom down on the ground, and then there's a gantry, or some people call it a mast. They put blocks on it, and they put that down, and that stabilizes, and there's no way the machine will move at all.
The methods will vary. Chocking the wheels with chocks that are large enough to stop the vehicle, lowering the bucket or blade to the ground level, placing cribbing under arms, booms, or extensions that may move, making sure that every part of the equipment is properly stabilized before performing any inspection, maintenance, or repair. Remember the haul truck with a repairman replacing a dump bed cylinder? How many pinch point hazards are there on a piece of equipment like this?
Off the top of my head, they would be hundreds of positions, because any position you get yourself into without having your body in the right position, you are compromising yourself on things. There would be so many numerous ones, I would not have a real answer for that.
Raymond has instructed the miners to keep their bodies to the side of the cylinder to prevent injury if it slips or falls.
The cylinder, the way you look at it, the way that the cylinder is going up, the cylinder would have went towards the rear or towards the front of the truck. That's why you've seen him keep himself away on the opposite side of the truck, away from the cylinder.
Repairmen must analyze where the pinch points are before accessing the equipment like this dozer.
If they've got their leg down between the track and the main frame, and they were taking off a side curtain, and the side curtain slipped, it could pinch their leg between the track or the frame, situations like that. And when they're climbing, make sure they use a 3-point approach, so they always have got a hold of something and 3 contact points when they're climbing.
A best practice guideline for all pinch point hazard analysis might simply be this.
Watch look in the area that you're going to go into, and if you don't think you could fit in there, or you think it's going to be hazardous, don't go in there.
How important is the lockout and tagout of all energy sources to any piece of equipment that you may be inspecting or repairing?
It's very important because if a person isn't paying attention and you don't lock out, another person can come up and crank up the machine up, and you could be working on a drive shaft, you could be working on a fan belt, and you could just lose your fingers, lose your life. So it's very important that you lock out everything and make sure that you have a master switch, make sure that it's de-energized. There's no way that power can get to that engine to start.
On equipment, you may have electric, hydraulic, pneumatic, and even gravity-fed components that must all be locked out and or blocked before safe work conditions can begin. The basics certainly require that the battery and or starter need to be disconnected on the unit. The ignition key must be taken out of the equipment and either put in the pocket of the person working on it or placed in an approved location and locked into a container with locks for each worker and a multiple lockout device. Out-of-service tags need to be placed in more than one location on the equipment. Now there are multiple tags visible, reminding everyone the equipment is locked out and tagged out. Components such as buckets, blades, booms, arms, and extensions need to be blocked, cribbed, or grounded to prevent movement. You've got to teach your people the technical skills and knowledge to work on the equipment, and you must equally train them in lockout, tagout, the safe way, the safe decision.
We try to make the person as well equipped to make safe decisions when they go into the field or in the shop to do work. So safety comes first, then we try to get the technical, but we combine them together so that we leave with a person that can make a safe technical decision.
You must teach miners that no excuse is acceptable for failure to lock out and tag out. I left my lock and key at home or in the truck. I figured the job would just take a very short period of time. Lockout would take hours. Man, I've done this job hundreds of times. I don't need to lock out. I know what I'm doing. There are endless numbers of reasons and excuses. Let miners know that none of them are acceptable, and only lockout, tagout will be approved. In drafting JTAs, all workers must have access to material data safety sheets in the workplace. These sheets identify the product by trade name and physical composition. They list potentially harmful side effects from improper human exposure to the materials. MSDSs also itemize spill remedies and remediation, in addition to firefighting techniques. Workers must be informed of the location of MSDSs and be provided with access to the material safety data sheets. In the event of accidental hazardous materials spillage, your JTAs need to include a company's spill response plan with flowcharts listing who miners contact in management at your company. They must also list external spill contractor contacts who may assist when spills of a certain size occur. The section should also list scenarios for both on-site and off-site spills. When any work is to take place in which fluids are to be drained, reused, or replaced, then catch basins must be provided.
That's a mandatory here at White Rock. Anywhere you think you're going to have any leakage at all, you put a catch basin under the bottom to keep that, and then we have a service truck that comes by that sucks the oil up out of it, and then we have a waste oil tank we put into, which is picked up and delivered to off-site.
There will be times when a hydraulic line or a hose breaks without warning in the field. Miners must be trained to handle these situations.
We started running the truck this morning, and we had a hose come off, break. Actually was leaking at the connection, and pulled it over here to the side and called the mechanics to come repair it.
In addition to repairing the hose, the men started cleaning up the leaking oil.
They were absorbing the oil, and what little did come on the ground, they got up. Once the truck is moved, if the repair's been made, once the truck is moved, we'll bring a loader and we'll clean up what's left, what very little is left, and we'll contain it in a barrel.
Environmental training must accompany safety training and then be reinforced.
When they're hired, they have 8 hours of training. Spill prevention is part of their training they get when they're hired on. Plus we have weekly meetings and that topic comes up probably every 3 months or so to just reiterate this kind of thing happening in the field.
In a repair job on a dredge to fix a damaged shaft that turns the cutting head and teeth, JTAs have no doubt referenced the proper PPE, even for miners welding and cutting on the shaft. All of the tools have been listed. Steps from beginning to end have been itemized, from access to the dredge to completion of repair. But does the JTA contain a plan for cleaning up the site and leaving it in a safe and environmentally correct manner? All repair tools will have to be removed and properly placed in toolboxes and storage areas. PFDs worn by miners need to be collected and placed in designated areas for future use. Cell phones and Nextels have to be located and retrieved. Welding and cutting torches, lines and gas cylinders must be inventoried, gathered, and then taken to their holding areas. Mobile cranes and even articulating haul trucks have ropes tied to them running to the dredge to stabilize it at the bank. The ropes and cables will need to be gathered and the mobile equipment moved out of the area to normal operating areas. Any cleaning solvents and lubricants for the shaft and tools must again be inventoried, gathered, and then removed. Any containers of spent solvents or lubricants must be taken to holding tanks on property and then disposed of by outside contractors who collect those fluids. Locks and tags will have to be removed from all energy sources on the barge and then taken back to a lockout station for storage or kept on miners' belt loops until needed again. Lockout processes will then have to be reversed after all persons have been removed from hazardous areas. We can't list every single cleanup step here, but the bottom line is this. Include with complete detail a cleanup plan in every JTA and identify PPE, tools, equipment, and hazardous materials that must be removed from the repaired equipment and area. We're combining these last two areas into one. When having your JTA writing and drafting sessions and later in your toolbox meetings in the field, be aware that special emphasis needs to be given to the holiday season safety. During the Christmas and New Year's holidays, miners eat more food, they consume more alcohol, get less sleep, and they have their minds on many events of the season. Special care should be taken by management, foremen, and supervisors to reinforce all safety practices during this time period. Managers should observe workers for any irregular behavior patterns during these days and nights. Additionally, during any time of the year, there may be a greater danger for supervisors and foremen to experience accidents and serious injuries than for regular miners and mining crew members. There are a number of factors that may lead to this situation. Managers may not be familiar with every step of job tasks, hazards, and safety because they don't perform these functions hands-on every day. Managers may feel the pressure to fulfill production quotas at all cost. Managers may not feel that all of the safety rules and regulations apply to them. The reasons may go on and on. Special care must be taken to train managers and foremen to avoid these pitfalls and practice the very same task training, complete task objectives, and follow all safety guidelines just like everyone else. Equipment maintenance safety and the job task analysis written procedures go hand in hand. Safety on the job is promoted at every turn. Worker qualifications and skills are screened in advance to meet task requirements. Hazards are identified, and then procedures for neutralizing hazards are put in place. Tasks are completed safely and more efficiently. Ultimately, the job task analysis approach provides for a more effective use of miners in their jobs while promoting their safety and their health.
Thanks for joining us. I urge you to include a job task analysis every time you maintain and repair your equipment. You and your coworkers owe it to your families to return home safely every day. Until our next exciting mine safety training video, work safe.